I never thought I would be that guy, the one who gets cheated on. My name is Ryan, and I was married to Jessica for 5 years. We had what I thought was a solid relationship. Sure, like any couple, we had our ups and downs, but I believed in us. We shared a house in a quiet suburb, 2 dogs, and the kind of life that looked good on paper. But then, things started changing, and I felt like I was living in a soap opera. It all began when Jessica started acting a bit off. She was always glued to her phone, texting away while we were supposed to be watching movies or having dinner. I dismissed it at first. After all, she had a job that sometimes required her to be available even after hours. But the longer it went on, the more it nagged at me. I noticed she was less present during our conversations, often distracted, her eyes flickering to the screen instead of looking at me. One evening, I was scrolling through my phone when I came across an app that tracks location. It belonged to Jessica, but the last time I checked, she said. She uninstalled it. I wondered why she hadn't mentioned it again. Curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to download it again just to see if it still worked. I logged in and there it was, her location, pinging away. At first I felt no malicious intent. Maybe she was at work or hanging out with friends. But when I noticed that she was frequently at a location that wasn't home during odd hours, my heart sank. I decided to track her for a few days, and the truth was hard to ignore. I saw her at a bar downtown, the same place she had told me she'd never visit because of bad experiences. I was starting to feel like a detective in my own life, snooping around for evidence that I hoped I wouldn't find. It wasn't until the night I caught her that everything fell apart. I had just come back from picking up takeout when I checked the app again. To my shock, she was at that same bar, but this time her location was steady, like she was there for a while. I glanced at the clock and it was late. I didn't want to believe what my gut was telling me, but instinct kicked in. I had to see for myself. I drove down to the bar, my heart racing. As I approached, I spotted her through the window, laughing, leaning in close to a guy I didn't recognize. He was handsome, with dark hair and a casual smile that made my stomach turn. They were sharing drinks, and it looked intimate. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I was frozen in place, watching what felt like a scene from a nightmare unfold in front of my eyes. In that moment, everything changed. This was no longer about a few text messages or late nights at the office. I was witnessing betrayal, and my whole world shifted. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I couldn't bring myself to. Instead, I turned around and left. I felt like a ghost in my own life, and the rage and heartbreak collided inside me. Once I got home, I was a mess. I tossed the takeout aside and buried my head in my hands. It's amazing how quickly love can turn into burning anger. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the laughter, the closeness, the deception I had been oblivious to. A million thoughts swirled through my mind. How long had this been going on? Did she even care? I knew I had to confront her, but I also knew I had to think this through. I needed a plan. I wouldn't just be angry, I would get even. I was going to make her feel the weight of her betrayal, a weight that I had been carrying since the moment I laid eyes on her with that guy. I wanted her to understand that I knew, and whatever she thought she was building with him, it was all going to come crashing down. The idea of revenge became my focus, a way to reclaim my power in the situation. I was determined to expose her lies and make her face the reality of her choices. I started plotting my revenge, and that's where things got really interesting. The days that followed my discovery were a whirlwind of emotions. I felt trapped between my pain and my plans for revenge. I couldn't show weakness. I had to keep my cool while I figured out the best way to confront Jessica. I went through the motions of our daily life, pretending everything was normal while my heart felt like it was being slowly crushed. I started paying closer attention to Jessica's behaviors, looking for cracks in her facade. She was still acting strangely, but I noticed more things now. She would leave the house for errands that didn't make sense. When she was home, she'd disappear to the bathroom for long stretches, and I realized she was likely texting the mystery guy. My gut churned at the thought of her sending sweet nothings, the same words of love she once reserved for me. One evening, I decided to take a different route to work. I wanted to see if I could track her down during the day. Sure enough, I saw her walk out of a cafe with that guy, and they were holding hands. My heart dropped. I parked the car a distance away and watched them interact, feeling like a spectator in my own life. She was laughing like I hadn't heard her laugh in months, and I couldn't help but feel a sharp pang of jealousy mixed with rage. Fueled by that sight, I reached out to a close friend, Mike, and told him what was going on. I needed someone to bounce ideas off, someone to keep me grounded. He was supportive but also reminded me not to lose myself in the anger. He suggested I document everything I had seen. So I started taking notes, dates, times, locations, and everything I could remember about her behavior leading up to my discovery. It felt cathartic, almost empowering, to put it all down on paper. As I gathered evidence, I began to formulate a plan. I could confront her with the proof I had compiled, making it impossible for her to spin a tale of innocence. I wanted to hold up a mirror to her betrayal and watch her squirm under the weight of her own lies. But I also knew I wanted something more impactful than a simple confrontation. I wanted to expose her in a way that would leave a mark. One night, I hacked into her old social media accounts. I knew her passwords by heart, and it wasn't hard to piece together conversations. I found messages that confirmed my worst fears. She was planning a trip with the guy, a weekend getaway. That was supposedly just a fun friend's thing. My blood ran cold. I couldn't believe the level of deceit. She had been living a double life, and I was the last to know. I decided that I would crash this getaway. I couldn't allow her to escape the consequences of her actions without a fight. It was time to take my revenge to the next level. I contacted a couple of friends who were also familiar with Jessica and asked if they'd be willing to help me stage a surprise. They were all in. The plan was simple but effective. I would show up at the vacation spot, a cabin in the woods, just as they were settling in. I made arrangements to borrow one of my friend's cars so I wouldn't be recognized. I knew Jessica would have no idea I was coming, and the shock on her face would be priceless. In the days leading up to the trip, I felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. What if she denied everything when confronted? What if she played innocent? I had to prepare myself for anything. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't be able to talk her way out of this one. The day of the getaway arrived. I packed a bag with the essentials, just enough to make it look like I was there for more than just a confrontation. I also brought my notebook, fully prepared to document every single moment. I wanted to have a record of her reaction, no matter how she tried to spin it. Driving to the cabin was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. I kept replaying every detail of my plan in my head, reminding myself that I was doing this for my own closure. I arrived at the cabin just as dusk was settling in. I parked down the road, hidden from view, and waited. As I approached the cabin, I could hear laughter and music drifting through the trees. My heart pounded in my chest as I crept up to the window, peeking in. There they were, Jessica and the guy I had seen at the bar, sitting together on the couch, sharing a bottle of wine. I was filled with a mix of rage and satisfaction. Here was the moment I had been waiting for, and it was finally time to make my presence known. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door without knocking. They both jumped, and I swear I could see the color drain from Jessica's face. The look of shock was everything I had hoped it would be. It was time to confront her and bring her lies crashing down around her. "Surprise," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos swirling inside me. "I didn't want to miss your little vacation." The moment I stepped into that cabin, everything shifted. Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief, and for a split second all the bravado I'd built up faltered. The guy sitting next to her, with his casual demeanor and smug grin, suddenly looked like a deer caught in headlights. It felt like a scene from a movie, one where the unsuspecting couple gets interrupted by an unexpected guest. "What are you doing here?" Jessica's voice was shaky, but she quickly masked it with a false veneer of confidence. She stood up, trying to act nonchalant, but her body language betrayed her. The way she crossed her arms and turned slightly away from me told me all I needed to know. The facade was cracking. "I thought I'd come to see how you two were." "Enjoying the getaway," I said, keeping my tone as cool as I could manage. "You know, since you've been so busy with work lately." I emphasized the last word, letting it hang in the air like a weight. The guy shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us. I could see the tension in his body. He knew he was in over his head, and I was grateful for the power I felt in that moment. I wasn't just some victim, I was taking control. Ryan, this isn't what it looks like. Jessica started, her voice rising slightly. I can explain. Can you? I shot back, my heart racing. Because from where I'm standing it looks pretty clear. You've been lying to me, sneaking around behind my back. How long has this been going on? She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. I watched her scramble for a story, her mind racing as she struggled to find a way to twist the truth. This was the moment I had been waiting for. I wanted her to feel the pressure of her deceit. We were just friends, she finally stammered. I swear nothing happened until recently. Recent? You mean after the last time we were intimate? I spat out, my anger boiling over. I was hurt, but I also felt a sense of empowerment when I saw her reaction. She looked cornered, her eyes darting toward the guy for support, but he had retreated into silence. We had some drinks and things just escalated, she admitted, her facade cracking further. I didn't mean for it to happen, Ryan. I love you, I really do. Love. I laughed bitterly, disbelief washing over me. If you loved me, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be betraying me with him. I pointed at the guy whose face had turned red as he began to realize the gravity of the situation. Ryan, please, Jessica pleaded, her voice cracking. It was a mistake. I didn't want it to get this far. I felt a twinge of pity, but I quickly suppressed it. This wasn't about sympathy. This was about holding her accountable. A mistake. This has been going on for weeks, maybe months. You've been texting him, planning this trip, pretending everything was fine at home. You think I wouldn't notice? I took a step closer, my anger fueling my determination. You think I'm just going to let this slide? You think I'll accept your pathetic excuses? Jessica glanced at the guy again, and he finally spoke up, trying to assert himself. Look, man, it's not what you think, I interrupted him, my voice low and steady. Shut up. You're part of the problem. You should be ashamed of yourself. He looked taken aback, but I didn't care. My focus was on Jessica, whose expression had shifted from defiance to a mix of fear and regret as the weight of her actions settled around her like a heavy fog. Do you think this is going to magically fix itself? I continued, trying to peel back the layers of deceit. You think you can just say you love me and I'll forget that you've been sleeping with someone else? We both know this isn't going to end well for you. She opened her mouth again, but this time I held up my hand. I don't want to hear any more lies. I came here to confront you, and you're not going to weasel your way out of this. I want the truth. For a moment the cabin was silent, the tension palpable. I felt a mix of anger and sadness wash over me, and for the first time I truly realized how deep her betrayal cut. I wasn't just angry, I was heartbroken. I was feeling neglected, she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. We were drifting apart and I didn't know how to fix it. Then I met him and it felt exciting. Exciting. I repeated, disbelief coloring my voice. So instead of coming to me, you decided to cheat. You made your choice, Jessica, and now you have to live with the consequences. I could see the tears welling in her eyes, but I steeled my heart against pity. I deserve better than this, and I'm not going to pretend you haven't shattered everything we built together. Her shoulders slumped, her bravado completely gone. I never meant to hurt you, Ryan. I was just weak. Weak. No, this is cowardice, I shot back. You could have fought for us, but instead you chose to stab me in the back. The weight of her betrayal felt like a physical blow, and I realized that I would never look at her the same way again. I felt the anger bubbling beneath the surface, but I also felt a sense of clarity. This was it, I was done. I want you to leave, I said firmly, my voice steady. I can't be around you right now. Just go. Jessica stood frozen for a moment, and I saw the shock reflected in her eyes. She opened her mouth as if to protest, but the words never came. Instead, she grabbed her things and rushed toward the door, tears streaming down her face. I turned to the guy who was still standing there, looking uncomfortable. You should leave too, I told him coldly. You have no place here. He didn't argue. He slipped out the door after Jessica, leaving me alone in the cabin, the echoes of their presence still hanging in the air like a bad dream. I felt an unexpected rush of relief wash over me, but it was quickly overtaken by the crushing weight of heartbreak. I stood there in silence, absorbing what had just happened. The confrontation had felt good, but it also left an ache I hadn't anticipated. I knew I had to pick up the pieces of my life, but I had no idea how long that would take or what the next steps would be. As I sat there, I realized it was time to reflect on everything that had happened. Jessica had made her choice, and now I had to make mine. It was time to think about moving forward and what that would look like without her. After Jessica left the cabin, I felt a crushing emptiness settle in. The adrenaline that had fueled my confrontation faded away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I sat on the couch, staring blankly at the wall, replaying every moment of that night. Part of me felt victorious for finally standing up for myself, but another part was drowning in sadness. The reality of what had just happened hit me like a tidal wave. My marriage was over, and I had to face that truth head-on. The dreams I once had of a future with Jessica, of growing old together, felt like they had been ripped away in an instant. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had unraveled. It felt surreal, as if I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stayed in the cabin for a while, trying to process my emotions. I grabbed my notebook and began to write. I detailed everything, my feelings, my thoughts, the confrontation. It felt good to get it all out, to express the turmoil I was experiencing. I wrote about the love I once had for Jessica, how it felt like a dagger to see it so carelessly tossed aside. I needed to articulate my pain to understand it because it felt like it was consuming me. As the night turned into dawn, I decided to head home. The drive was quiet, almost meditative. I thought about the life we had shared, the moments that had once brought me joy now tainted with betrayal. Arriving home, I was struck by the emptiness of it all. I had walked into a house that felt like a shell, once filled with laughter and love. Now it felt cold and hollow. In the following days, I went through a whirlwind of emotions. I was angry, sad, confused, everything all at once. I started to reach out to friends, trying to lean on them during this tumultuous time. Mike was particularly supportive, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this. He urged me to focus on what I wanted moving forward instead of getting lost in the pain of what had happened. I spent time at my favorite bar, sitting in the corner, nursing a drink and reflecting on my life. I found comfort in the company of friends who reassured me that I was better off without Jessica. They reminded me of my worth, of how I deserved someone who would cherish me instead of betray me. It helped, but the scars of infidelity were still fresh and raw. Eventually, I decided to take proactive steps. I started seeing a therapist who specialized in relationship issues. It was a huge relief to talk openly about my experiences without judgment. I learned how to process my feelings and eventually began to see the situation with a clearer perspective. One session, I discussed the confrontation with Jessica, how it had felt to finally stand up for myself. My therapist encouraged me to focus on the lessons learned rather than just the pain. "What have you gained from this?" she asked, and I realized that I had learned about my own strength. I had confronted the truth and faced it head-on, something I wouldn't have done a year ago. I also started to explore new hobbies. I took up running, something I had always wanted to do but never made the time for. It was freeing to hit the pavement, to sweat out my frustrations and clear my mind. With every mile, I felt a little lighter, a little more in control of my life. Despite the emotional roller coaster, I began to rebuild myself. I focused on my career, pouring my energy into my work. I picked up new projects that excited me, and it felt invigorating to channel my emotions into something productive. Slowly, I began to see a future that didn't include Jessica, one where I could thrive on my own. After a few weeks of healing, I made a decision. I needed to cut all ties with Jessica. The thought of reaching out to her felt like a betrayal of my newfound strength. I packed up her things, clothes, photos, mementos of our life together, and arranged to have Mike drop them off at her place. I didn't want to see her again, not after everything that had happened. It was time to sever the last remaining ties, to fully embrace the notion that I was moving on. The day Mike returned from dropping off her things, I felt a mix of anxiety and relief. I had done what I needed to do, but I was still left with a wound that hadn't fully healed. I sat down with him and shared my thoughts. "I'm proud of you, man. You've come a long way," he said, giving me a reassuring pat on the back. It was a small gesture, but it meant the world. As I continued to move forward, I reflected on what I had learned from this experience. I understood the importance of communication in relationships and the need for transparency. I also realized that I was worthy of love, respect, and loyalty. It was a hard lesson to learn, but one that I would carry with me into future relationships. I began to focus on rebuilding my life, a life that was mine and mine alone. I started to envision a future without Jessica, one filled with new experiences and opportunities. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, one step at a time. This was just the beginning. I had faced my demons and I was ready to reclaim my life. I wouldn't let her betrayal define me. No, I was going to rise above it, stronger than before. I was ready for whatever came next, and I wouldn't look back. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself settling into a new routine. The initial shock of the breakup had faded, replaced by a cautious optimism. I was learning how to navigate life as a single man, rediscovering parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of my marriage to Jessica. I was finally reclaiming my identity. One Friday evening, I decided to head back to that bar where I first spotted Jessica with the other guy. It felt like a rite of passage, facing the place that had once represented betrayal, but now felt like a stepping stone toward healing. I walked in, and the familiar sounds of laughter and clinking glasses enveloped me. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that I was no longer that vulnerable man who had walked in weeks ago. Heartbroken and confused, as I settled at the bar, I struck up a conversation with the bartender, a friendly guy named Doug. We talked about everything from sports to life in the city, and I found myself laughing more than I had in a long time. It was liberating to let go of the past and enjoy the present moment. That night, I met a woman named Lily. She was sitting a few stools down, and we exchanged casual glances throughout the evening. When our eyes finally met, we struck up a conversation that flowed effortlessly. She was smart, witty, and had a warmth that was contagious. We talked about our favorite movies, music, and even shared a few embarrassing stories. I felt a spark that I hadn't felt in a long time, and it was refreshing. As the night wore on, Lily and I ended up sitting closer together, the chemistry between us undeniable. I could feel the weight of my past beginning to lift as I started to envision a future that included someone new. We exchanged numbers, and as I left the bar, I felt a sense of excitement mixed with nervousness. It was a small step, but it felt monumental. Over the next few weeks, Lily and I went on several dates, and I found myself falling for her. It was a slow burn, and I appreciated that we took our time getting to know each other. I opened up about my past, sharing the details of my marriage to Jessica and my subsequent heartbreak. To my surprise, Lily didn't shy away from it. She listened intently and offered support, never judging me for my history. As our relationship blossomed, I became acutely aware of how different Lily was from Jessica. She was genuine, attentive, and most importantly, she communicated openly. The contrasts were stark. Where Jessica had hidden her infidelity, Lily embraced honesty. It was refreshing and necessary for my healing process. I realized how important it was to be with someone who valued trust and loyalty. Yet, even with all this progress, I still had moments of fear. I worried about repeating the past, about being hurt again. I had learned to guard my heart, not wanting to dive headfirst into a relationship without ensuring that I was ready. I took my time, and Lily respected that. She never pressured me to move faster than I was comfortable with, which made me appreciate her even more. One evening, while we were watching a movie at my place, I turned to her and said, "I know we've only been dating for a few months, but you've already made a significant impact on my life. I never expected to feel this way again." Lily smiled softly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "I feel the same, Ryan. It's amazing how life can surprise us, isn't it? I know you've been through a lot, and I want you to take your time. I'm here for you." Her words meant everything. I felt a flicker of hope and a sense of belonging that I had thought was lost forever. We continued to build our relationship, taking the time to connect on a deeper level. Slowly but surely, I began to let go of the ghosts of my past and embrace the possibilities of a future that felt bright and exciting. However, the final chapter with Jessica wasn't quite closed yet. I received a message from her one day, out of the blue. My heart raced as I opened it, a mix of anxiety and curiosity flooding over me. She wanted to meet up to talk. I was hesitant. Part of me wanted to ignore it completely, to erase her from my life, but I also knew that closure was essential. After some contemplation, I decided to agree to meet her. I owed it to myself to face her one last time and lay everything out on the table. I chose a small coffee shop that was neutral territory, a place where we could talk without distractions. When I arrived, I spotted her sitting at a table, nervously tapping her fingers on the surface. As I approached, I could see the anxiety etched on her face. I took a seat across from her, and silence hung heavily between us for a moment. "Thank you for meeting me," she finally said, her voice shaky. I nodded, unsure of what to say. "What did you want to talk about?" "I know I hurt you, Ryan, and I'm sorry. I've had time to think, and I know I made a huge mistake." She looked genuinely remorseful, but I also knew that apologies alone couldn't erase the pain she had caused. "I don't want to rehash everything we've already discussed." "Jessica," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You made your choices and I've moved on. I just want to understand why you did it." She sighed, looking down at her coffee. "I was scared. I felt trapped in our routine, and instead of talking to you, I made the worst decision possible. I regret it every day." "Regret doesn't change what you did," I replied, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. "I've had to rebuild my life without you, Jessica. I'm not going to let your mistakes define who I am." "I know," she said softly. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry, genuinely. I hope you find happiness. You deserve it." Her words surprised me. For a moment I felt a flicker of empathy for her, but it was quickly overshadowed by the realization that I had already found that happiness without her. "Thank you," I said, my tone softer. "I appreciate that. Just know that I've moved on. There's no going back for me." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I wish things had been different." We sat in silence for a moment, two people who once shared a life now completely estranged. I finally stood up and looked her in the eye. "This is goodbye, Jessica. I hope you find peace." As I walked away from that coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. I had faced her one last time, and I was ready to leave the past behind for good. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next with Lily or anyone else. Reclaiming my life meant not just moving on from Jessica, but also embracing the new beginnings and possibilities that lay ahead. I was finally at peace, ready to fully invest in my future and the love that awaited me. The road ahead was still uncertain, but it was mine, and that made all the difference. After that meeting with Jessica, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. It was as if I had finally closed a chapter that had been lingering for far too long, and I was ready to embrace the new possibilities that lay ahead. My relationship with Lily continued to blossom, and I found myself more invested than ever. We spent the summer exploring the city, going on spontaneous adventures and enjoying each other's company. Each day felt like a new beginning, and I was grateful for the laughter and connection we shared. It was refreshing to be with someone who genuinely cared, who encouraged me to be my best self, and who celebrated my journey. One afternoon, we decided to go hiking at a nearby state park. As we ascended the trail, the sun streamed down through the trees, and I felt a sense of euphoria. Being outdoors, away from the noise and distractions of life, was invigorating. As we reached the summit, we were greeted with a breathtaking view, a vast landscape stretching out before us, the horizon painted with shades of blue and green. "This is amazing," Lily said, her eyes sparkling as she took in the sight. "I would never have imagined feeling this way again, standing next to someone who brought so much joy into my life." I turned to her, feeling a rush of gratitude. "I'm so glad we did this. It feels good to be out here, away from everything." She smiled back, and in that moment I realized just how far I had come. I was no longer haunted by the past. Instead, I was embracing the present and looking forward to the future. After our hike, we decided to stop by a quaint cafe nestled in the park. As we sipped our coffee and shared pastries, I felt a sense of warmth wash over me. We talked about our dreams, our favorite places, and the little things that made us happy. It was refreshing and comforting all at once. Ryan, Lily said, her tone shifting slightly, I know we've only been dating for a little while, but I feel really connected to you. I want you to know that I'm here for you no matter what. Her sincerity struck a chord within me. I felt a rush of emotion, realizing how lucky I was to have someone who understood the complexities of my past yet chose to be a part of my future. Thank you, Lily. I feel the same way. It's been a long journey for me, but I want to be open to whatever comes next. The summer rolled on, and as we continued to build our relationship, I found myself thriving. The hurt from my past was still there, but it had transformed into lessons learned and strength regained. I'd learned the importance of honesty, communication, and most importantly, self-worth. One evening, as we were cooking dinner together, I realized how natural it felt to be with her. We danced around the kitchen, laughing as we tried to follow a complicated recipe. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. In that space, I felt safe and happy, a feeling I hadn't experienced in a long time. One night, as we lay on the couch watching a movie, Lily turned to me and said, You know, I've never met anyone like you, Ryan. You have this strength about you, and I admire that. I looked into her eyes, feeling the warmth of her words. I appreciate you saying that. It's taken a lot to get to this point, but I'm so glad I found you. With every passing day, I felt myself falling more deeply for her. It was a sensation I had once feared, but now it filled me with excitement. I had learned to let go of the fear of vulnerability, and it was liberating. As autumn approached, I began to think about my future more seriously. I had put my past behind me, and now I was ready to embrace whatever came next with Lily. We had built a solid foundation, and I felt hopeful about the potential of our relationship. One crisp evening, we sat outside by a fire pit in my backyard, roasting marshmallows and enjoying each other's company under a starry sky. The cool air wrapped around us, and the flames danced in the night. It felt like a scene from a romantic movie, one where everything was perfect. In that moment, I knew it was time to take the next step. I turned to Lily, my heart racing. Can we talk about us? Of course, she replied, her expression open and inviting. I really enjoy being with you, and I can see a future together. I want to be all in. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my words. I'm ready to let go of my past completely, and I want to build something real with you. Her smile widened, and I could see the happiness in her eyes. I feel the same way. I'm so glad you want to take this step. I'm excited about where this is going. As we embraced, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I had never imagined that I could find love again after everything I had been through, but here I was, opening my heart to someone new, someone who valued me for who I truly was. With each passing day, I grew more confident in my decision. I was no longer defined by my past or the pain that had once held me captive. I had learned, grown, and emerged stronger. I was ready to embrace this new chapter in my life with Lily by my side. As we moved forward together, I reflected on what I had learned through this journey. Every heartbreak had taught me resilience, and every moment of pain had brought me closer to understanding my worth. I knew that love could be messy and complicated, but it was also beautiful and worth fighting for. I had faced my demons, confronted my past, and emerged victorious. My heart was open, ready for the love that awaited me. This was my new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it fully.